Hi everyone, this is SOCI 1010, Lesson 1.2. Last time we took a look at the sociological imagination, highlighting the relationship that exists between our personal private lives and the larger social structure or social world around us. We looked at some of the key elements that were involved. Keep in mind that today some of those have become global in nature, and there's some information on the first and second pages of the first study guide that will highlight the influence of what is referred to as globalization. Now we're going to focus on another key way by which to maximize the benefits of this class. I strongly encourage you to become familiar with the three key assumptions on which sociology is based. You will find these located on the third page of the first study guide. They form what I consider to be the very foundations of the course itself. First and foremost, bear in mind that we human beings are social. If you'll think about this for just a moment, I think you will all recognize, if you've been around babies and very young children, we need others in order to survive. Our normal growth and development is dependent upon the support and guidance we receive from others. And even as adults, we need others, not just for physical survival, but for love, support, meaning, and happiness. And we tend to take all of this for granted. We learn from others, as well as internalize via our interaction with them our very way of living, our culture, via a process that sociologists refer to as socialization. Through this process, we develop traits we don't have at birth: talents, interests, values, ideas, norms, the ability to create and use symbols, personality traits, as well as a notion of who we are, what sociologists refer to as self-awareness or selfhood. Throughout our whole lives, we are embedded within groups, organizations, communities, and societies. All of these form and shape us to an extent. It's difficult to get away from their influence. And if you'll think about it for just a moment, how have we humans become the most dominant species on the planet? I'll ask you, how strong are you? How many of you can lift 10, 20, 50, 100, 200 times your body weight? I think most of us agree it would be very difficult when you get up to those higher numbers. But are there living creatures that regularly lift 100, 200, even 500 times their body weight? Unfortunately, like me, you may have some of these in your home. They're called ants. Could you run away? Are you fleet-footed enough to run away from a hungry predator who's interested in eating you? If that particular predator is four-legged, you're going to lose. Can you fly away from danger without the aid of some machine? And I don't care how high you may become on some sort of a drug. Can you? No. Do you have protective body armor, like an armadillo? Do you have fangs and claws that allow you to fight off a hungry predator? Well, other than our remarkable intellect, how is it that we become the dominant species on the planet? Well, the answer is basic. A long, long time ago, we formed groups. Individually, we're weak, but collectively, we are strong. Another question, how many hermits do you know? Now, if you know a hermit, is that person truly a hermit? Plus, how many people do you think on average each year decide to live completely apart from their fellow human beings? Well, not very many. We're social. Secondly, much of our behavior exhibits patterns and regularities. Collectively, sociologists refer to these as the social structure. Some are formal and obvious. Each of you has on your person, I suspect, a thin piece of plastic with hopefully a much better photograph of you than mine. It's called a driver's license. Didn't you have to learn a series of patterns in order to acquire that driver's license? You know what we refer to those patterns as, the rules of the road. How many of you were athletes in high school, middle school? Did you have a coach that laid out a particular set of plays? You practiced them again and again and again, where you could run them blindfolded backwards. Have any of you participated in a formal wedding ceremony? If you have, what happened the night before or the afternoon before the event? I suspect you went through a rehearsal whereby you knew exactly what was expected of you. Patterns. These are obvious patterns. I remember being bored to tears in a high school political science / civics class when we had to regurgitate on command the process by which a bill became a law. On the other hand, there are a lot of subtle patterns. We may not be aware of these. For example, here's one. Has anyone ever greeted you with this? Hi, how you doing? Is there a patterned response? Well, I think you all recognize, absolutely. It's usually this one. Fine, how are you? You can really appreciate the significance of patterns by sometimes challenging them. That's what I'd encourage you to do. With a straight face, the next time someone greets you with that particular statement, look them right in the eye and simply ask them these questions. What would you like to know? Are you interested in my school life, in my finances, in my health? I'm just confused. Every time you see me, you greet me in the same way. How are you? Would you please be more specific? Watch these folks' behavior and facial expressions. You can appreciate how significant these patterns are. Furthermore, imagine you're the first person on board a crowded elevator car. Are there patterns you follow? Well, yeah. You're going to go to one of the two back corners. Once you reach the corner, you're going to turn around and face the front. Where do you direct your gaze? Do you interact directly with these folks on board that you don't know? Do you ask them a lot of personal questions? What would be your response if one of them leaned over and began asking you really personal questions about, for example, your bathroom behavior? I can tell you how I would respond. I would be frightened. What do these patterns do for us? They exist throughout human societies. Well, on the one hand, they help to make much of our behavior routine. That saves us a great deal of time. And secondly, these patterns help to ensure some degree of stability and continuity in everyday social interaction. Put in another way, they help to ensure a degree of social order because we have some idea of what to expect or how to behave. Take a look at this photograph. The questions being asked there is this chaos or order? It looks quite chaotic. It's a shot from a busy street scene in Bangladesh. But eventually, will people get to where they need to go? The answer is yes, and that's due to social structure. It even crops up, interestingly enough, in a few cartoons. An old Calvin and Hobbes cartoon. Calvin makes the comment, every day it's the same old thing. And then he decides, but not today. So he's going out the door without any clothes on. If you'll notice up here, this is his frantic mother. And notice his comment, everyone's a slave to routine. Third, bear in mind that although much of our behavior exhibits structures, that is to say, patterns, these patterns do change over time. Conflict and change are natural and inevitable features of groups and societies. To survive, any group or any organization has to make changes having to do with adjusting to social as well as physical environments. Rapid change often comes with a price. I think you'd all agree with me, it can lead to conflict within a society, an organization, a community, a group. Sometimes you will find that change is resisted by those who have a vested interest in a particular way of doing things. This is particularly true of people who have a great deal of power. Unless they can control change, they tend to resist it because they're benefiting from a particular arrangement. Change may give rise to protest activities. If you look at events in the world today, some of them are related directly to change, where change is viewed as being dangerous to a particular theme, to a particular way of living. On the other hand, I think you'd all agree with me that history is littered with examples of people coming to believe that change isn't occurring fast enough, or it isn't taking place in a particular direction. This can spark even more conflict that can lead to revolution. And change shows up in a lot of interesting ways. Focus on this cartoon I found in the Knoxville News Sentinel some time ago. As you look at it, you might think about something else. Could this happen to you? Well, I was barely sitting down when I heard a voice in the other stall saying, "Hi, how are you doing?" Well, I'm not the type to start a conversation in the restroom, but I don't know what got into me, so I answered, somewhat embarrassed, "Doing just fine." Then the other person says, "So what are you up to?" Well, what kind of question is that, I thought at this particular point. Believing it to be rather bizarre, I suddenly found myself saying, well, just like you, traveling. At this point, I'm just trying to get out as fast as I can when I hear another question. "Can I come over?" Okay, I said to myself, this question is far too weird. But I figured I ought to be polite and end the conversation, so I made the comment, well, no, I'm a little busy right now. Then I hear the other person saying nervously, "Listen, I'll have to call you back because there's some idiot in the other stall who keeps answering all my questions." I think you can highlight that right off the top of your head as being the influence of cell phones. On the other hand, take a look at changes that have occurred, particularly with respect to the role of women. In films prior to 1970, women were often, again, passive receptors of a lot of male aggression and assertion. But starting in the 1970s with a film entitled Coffee, and then through the 80s, 90s, and up to the current time, you began to see, again, women being portrayed in a very aggressive, straightforward fashion, all the way up to, and including some of the films you see here, even a couple of them animated in nature, where women are in control. They're kind of, if you will, badasses. So change is part of our lives. You can see change also in the fact that in our society since 1970, there's been dramatic alterations in the status of women. For example, the share of married couples in which the wife is more educated than the husband is rising. It was 7% in 1960. By 2012, it was 23%. The number of working wives who make more than their husbands has been increasing even more dramatically. In 1970, 40%. Today, it's 30+% and rising. And I think all of you would agree that once women began to make more than husbands, does that influence who makes the major decisions within the family? So keep these three key assumptions in mind. They will help you to better appreciate and understand what we will investigate in the future.